Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In my hands I've got the Samsung Galaxy Young, a popular phone from 2011 that sold like hotcakes thanks to its low price and the novelty of having Android. But now, over a decade later, we'll see if this 2011 beast can still handle regular everyday tasks. Powered by the mighty 864 MHz single-core CPU, it runs Android 2.3 by default. We also have some nice 384 MB of RAM and 190 MB of storage. And no, you didn't hear that wrong, it has more RAM than internal storage. We also have a 240 by 323-inch TFT display, and the numbers speak for themselves. We can also note that Samsung did not bother to use glass, but instead went for plastic, which makes it more resistant to falls, but as a downside, it gets scratched by just looking at it. We also have the standard features of those years: 3G, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, a basic camera, removable battery, and headphone jack. Given that this device was a low-end phone in 2011, these specs, as you might imagine, have not aged very well, with emphasis on its RMv6 CPU, which is by far the thing that has aged the most. This phone originally came out with Android 2.3, which is now obsolete, so I took to the internet and installed a custom ROM called Slim and Beauty, based on Android 4.4, which runs quite well given the limitations. If you're wondering if there are ROMs that go beyond KitKat, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but given its old RMv6 processor, it's pretty much impossible to port versions higher than Android 4.4. At most, we can get a theme ROM based on newer versions, like the ROM I showed in my 2021 video. I also have to point out that it was an odyssey to find working ROMs. Many forums and pages led to broken links. Oftentimes the ROMs didn't work or gave many problems or required add-ons that were no longer available for download. And to top it all off, ROMs that would completely kill off the phone, leaving it unusable and forcing me to flash the stock ROM with the computer. So it took a long time to find a functional custom ROM, and the best I would say is Cyanogen Mode 9 Lite that came out in late 2018. Some of these ROMs come with an added benefit, and that is the ability to perform an overclock up to 1.1 GHz, which really comes in handy. Now, with all that out of the way, let's see what this 2011 budget phone is really made of. First, basic things like calling and messaging depend on whether your country still supports 3G or not. Calendar, the music player, etc. are timeless functions this phone can still do. Interestingly, the GPS still works, and by making use of an older version of Google Maps, you could still use it if you have the mania of getting lost out there. Moving on to web browsing, the standard browser that came with the ROM is barely enough for Google searches. It's so old it can't even load the Wikipedia page. And despite having KitKat, we will not be able to use the latest version of Opera Mini for this version. We'll have to go to some repository and download an older build to use it. All this thanks to the blessed RMv6 processor that limits what we can do. However, this version is enough to not only do Google searches, but also load Wikipedia articles as well as not very demanding websites. With much heavier pages such as the Apple website, it takes a while to load, and when it's done, the page is only half-baked, but to its credit, at least we can have an idea of the content inside. The official YouTube app stopped working late 2018, so I tried to watch YouTube videos using Opera Mini, but it only plays the audio while the video is glitched due to the lack of power. And it's not the browser, as this version is perfectly capable of playing videos, so we only have one option, and that is to download the videos and watch them later. Instagram still works, but if you want to use it, you'll have to get the version 7.7 from September 2015. I tested Instagram Lite as well, but it didn't work. Anyway, we can still see posts, interact with the content to an extent, check our profile, and play with the old filters. But sadly, we can't post anything anymore. Anyway, can we just take a second to appreciate how beautiful the old Instagram app looked? The Lite version of Facebook, unlike the previous app, does work on this phone, and surprisingly runs fairly decently. We can still use it to send messages and even post pictures, something that was not possible on Instagram. Even though Android KitKat is still compatible with WhatsApp, once again you guessed it, RMv6 processor and its old libraries do not allow us to use the app. The installation process is normal, but the problem arises when you try to use it. You'll get a message that reads uninstall and reinstall. When it comes to games, the latest ones no longer run on this phone for obvious reasons, and if you want to play any games here, you'll have to look for the APKs for RMv6 processors. There are many good games from 2008 to 2012 that you can play, even 3D games like the first Nova, Asphalt 6, and even GTA 3. The bad thing is that on top of having to look for those ancient APKs, you have to use Chainfire 3D, which is very difficult to get at this point. Also, we have so little storage I couldn't install any of these games here. Honestly, I didn't have the patience to format and partition my SD card with all my files inside, since I felt it was not worth it. Anyway, if I see this video has support, I may make a video focused only on 3D games. On the other hand, casual games from the time like Plants vs Zombies run almost flawlessly as you can see on screen. OJ Angry Birds runs perfectly, though the small screen adds unnecessary difficulty to the game. Subway Surfers on the other hand is playable, there's lag but it's not enough to say it's unplayable. Bad Piggies has a lot of lag, though at the time I would have played this game with a smile on my face. I mean, for this type of games I guess it really doesn't matter that much. Boson X, a casual game from 2014, has a couple starters here and there, but nothing major. And finally we got Resident Evil 4, which surprisingly is somewhat playable. I think this game is the most demanding game we can play without hacks like Chainfire. Anyway, the performance is not great, and the small display makes it so difficult to play, but other than that, we gotta see the limits of the Galaxy Y with this game. And sorry for not leaving links of the apps, I don't want YouTube to take down my videos for the third time. Emulation wise, this phone can handle some basic emulators. In this case I'm playing Super Mario Bros. 3 for the NES. The most difficult thing was to find emulators compatible with RMV6, and you know it's bad when it's easier to find emulators for Symbian. SNES also runs quite well. I'm playing Donkey Kong Country and the game lags here and there, but still perfectly playable, just like most SNES games. As a video player it's horrible, it can't even play videos in 480p, something very disappointing for a phone from 2011, considering that many 2008 phones could do the same task more than fine, and the speaker itself is mediocre even taking its age into account. As for the camera, we have a 2-megapixel sensor that can record videos up to 240p at 15 frames per second, and as you can imagine, the photos and videos are as bad as they sound, to the point that many feature phones had better cameras than this thing, but to its credit, it's not the worst camera I've seen in my life. In conclusion, we can easily note the excessive cut Samsung made with the Galaxy Y. Even by the standards of 2011, it was unusable if you were not an advanced user, let alone today. Even my Nokia 6120 from 2008 held up better than this phone, and it's for reasons like this it's considered by many as one of the worst phones in history. But honestly, despite being, excuse me the word, a piece of crap, it's a phone that's managed to win the hearts of the people who used it. It was a different time, man. This was the first Android device of many people, and the feeling of having your first Android phone was almost magical. Feeling that does nothing but grow over the years with nostalgia. It's as if the phone had something that many phones of today do not have, a soul.